My talk this morning is called Is the Invisible Real? And I don't know how many of you saw that title and thought, where did she come up with that idea? So I came up with it from 3 conversations that happened within less than a week of each other that all had to do with this, and so it's been on my mind since then. So the first one was somebody I was having dinner with, and he was telling me that he's not religious, and the reason that he's not religious is that religion is all based on faith, and it's not something you can prove, and unless they can do some kind of double-blind studies to prove that there's a higher power, he's not going to believe it. And then later in the conversation, because he knew I was interested in dreams, he talked about a series of dreams that he had with his father who had died. And I believe it was the 4th dream, his father was crossing over a bridge and then came down these stairs and said to him, "This is going to be the last time." And then he never had a dream about him again. So I asked him, "Do you think it was a visitation?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Do you think it was actually your father coming to you in the dream?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Do you think it was actually your father, or do you think it was your memory of him?" And he said, "Well, of course I have a memory of him. I can remember what his voice sounded like, and I can remember what he looked like." And I asked, "So do you think that's what the dream was, your memory of him, or do you think it was actually him?" He said, "I don't know what you mean." So I stopped my train of questioning there, and I don't know if you ever read the novel Stranger in a Strange Land. That's kind of what I felt like we were on different planets.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was telling me that she had a dream after one of her family members died, and she knew it was actually this family member in the dream. And I said, "How did you know that?" Because this other conversation was on my mind. And she said, "I just know. I felt it." And I had a 3rd conversation with someone who had a similar experience, that he said he knew that it was his deceased wife that came to him in the dream. It wasn't just his ideas of her. So that experience, first of all, of people having visitations, whether in dreams or awake, is not a weird experience. It's actually a very common experience. And somewhere here I have a statistic about it. About 50% of people, after somebody dies who they're close to, either has a dream about them or a waking visitation, meaning they're aware of that person's presence when they're awake. And the reason that this kind of, I wouldn't say preys on my mind, but why I reflect on it is that there are many things in our lives that are not physical, and if people believe that the only thing that is real is physical, at least in my opinion, it seems like it would be hard to have a happy and fulfilled life. I mean, think about some of the invisible forces that operate every day, like hope, like wonder, like beauty, or faith, or love, or trust. You know, these are not physical things. They have physical effects, or they can have physical effects. But they're all non-physical, and to me it seems like they all have to do with recognizing that there's some kind of potential that develops. That there's something inside, you know, whether we're talking about inside a person, the soul or the spirit, or we're talking about planting a flower seed and watering it and taking care of it because you have faith that it's going to grow. I mean, you can't see that flower seed once it's in the dirt. And unless you dig it up every day to see how it's doing, which is going to kill it, you trust that these are good seeds, you trust that you have the right conditions, you have faith that it's going to grow, and so you tend to it. And I think that's true with these other invisible forces in our lives, is that we need to recognize that they are real and that they are true so that we can continue to cultivate them. So, some of the reason why this is so important and profound is that I think when people have experiences of the non-physical, like a dream of someone who's died, or like a very strong faith in a higher power that can facilitate healing, it can give us lots of things. It can give us comfort, it can give us assurance, it can help us to keep going when sometimes we might feel like not going. And I brought this up before, but I want to bring it up again because to me this was a very life-changing experience. I was young when my father died and too young to even have any concept that somebody could come to you in a dream after they died. I wasn't raised with a religion, so I wasn't raised in the belief that there's life after death. And then some years later, I married a man who died young, and by that time I did know about dreams. I had become a minister, so I had developed a faith in a higher power. And even though cognitively I believe that there's life after death, when John died, I was completely devastated. I mean, even though he had been sick, we thought he was going to get a kidney transplant and live for a long time. And he didn't. He died waiting for the transplant. So it was sudden and it was unexpected. And in my life, he was the one person, other than my father, who had died years before that, who I knew in every part of my being, I felt loved, I felt accepted, I felt nourished. And so when he died, I just felt like a part of me had been ripped out. And I mean, I had people in my life who loved me. I absolutely have people in my life who love me. But there was no one else in my life where I felt that complete, abiding, nourishing love. And it's not exactly like I wanted to die, but I didn't really feel like I had anything to live for. And even though cognitively I believed that he still existed, that was a lot different from, really feeling it in my heart. And I had a few waking visitations that I'm not going to talk about today. I've written about them in a book if you want to know about them, or I'd be happy to tell you. But the dream I had that was so profound, because it was not just about John, it was, in my opinion, a dream about humanity. He died on September 10th in the year 2000. So a year later, September 10th, 2001, I was going to spend a day with my memory of him, doing some prayer and meditation, but I had to work that day, so I decided I would do it the next day, which was September 11th, 2001. And so we all know what happened on September 11th, 2001. The entire world was plunged into grief. I mean, I don't care where someone is, everybody on this planet was affected by the things that happened that day. And I grew up in New York. I have a sister-in-law who lives in New York. My nephew, who was 11 at the time, lived in New York. I still have some friends from high school who live there. And I couldn't get a hold of anyone. I mean, all of the cell towers were down, and so I had no idea if these people were dead or alive. And so I just spent all day praying and sending out light and love, hoping that everyone was okay. And that evening, I had a dream that John was in New York, and he was helping the people who had died in the World Trade Center, and he looked beautiful. He looked radiant, and he was extremely handsome, and he was his most handsome self, and just, lit up with this celestial light. And I looked at him and I said, "Are they okay?" Meaning the people who had died. And he said, "Yes, they're fine. Once they're out, they're fine." And when he said, "Once they're out," I could feel this exhilaration of the spirit feeling the body, and the freedom and the wonder and the awe. And it was so profound, because I truly believe that that is a universal message. That once someone is liberated from this bodily vehicle, Reverend Polly calls it a meat suit. Sometimes it might feel like a bodily prison, especially if you have aches and pains. Once we're liberated from that, were fine. And the people who weren't fine were the ones who were still here on earth, who were mad, who were afraid, who were whatever their emotions were. So probably there are chemicals in the body that could be measured to say, oh yes, this is the experience of awe. Just like there are chemicals in the body that they've discovered, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. People say, well, that's what love is. When you're in love, it's just your body being flooded with these chemicals. And I think that's backwards. I think we experience the love that then resonates in the body, it affects the body. And so what we're measuring in the body with the chemicals is the effect, it's not the cause. And I think that's true of any of these invisible forces that we experience. Like, I don't know about you, but I love sunsets. If I was an early riser, I would probably love sunrises, but I'm a night owl, so I love sunsets more. And sometimes I am just so awestruck at a sunset. There's a place near here called Creve Coeur Lake, and if you time it right, and you start your walk on the right side of the lake, when you finish your walk around the lake, you can see these sunsets that get reflected in the lake, and sometimes you see, if it's a cloudy day, these rays that come down from the clouds, they're called crepuscular rays. It looks like heaven is shining down.
Yes.
And that sense of awe, I don't think it's the sunset that causes it. I think the sunset stimulates it, but the awe is inside of us. It's our connection with the divine. And I mean, what could be more divine than looking at nature and all the wonders in it? In fact, Einstein, this may not be the exact quote, said that he studied the physical universe so he could understand the mind of God. And I believe that's true. I think that's true when we have faith in anything, whether it's faith in another person, faith in a higher power, faith in the inherent goodness of humanity. I know sometimes I have conversations with people who are very pessimistic about our current, I will say, political climate. And I am not a Pollyanna, but I really believe that good prevails. And therefore, I believe that when we have faith in the goodness of humanity, if we do something toward that end, that the good will prevail. If we just sit and complain about it, guess what's going to prevail? The complaints and the worries. And if we believe, we talk about this here, that we are spiritual beings having human experience, not the other way around, that's why I believe that these inner experiences, the hope, the wonder, the beauty, the joy, the love, they start on the inside and then they affect the outside. It's not the other way around. So, you know, to me, just like that conversation with the man who couldn't understand my question about a visitation, I believe that one of the reasons why people have a hard time believing that something is real is we've been taught that in some ways. Most kids, when they're young and have a nightmare, they run into their parent or grandparent or whoever the caretaker is, and they're afraid, and the well-meaning parent says, if they don't understand dreams, don't worry about it, dear. It was just a dream. It's not real. And so here you have the kid who's afraid and, you know, still sweating from the fear and can't let go of it, and someone's saying that didn't exist.
Right.
You didn't have that experience. And so it's very confusing. And we have to somehow be able to create a reality that's going to accept that, so we just say, okay, well, dreams aren't real. Or sometimes it's with imagination, where someone has a great idea, or sometimes they're afraid of something, and a well-meaning person says, don't worry about it, it was just your imagination, meaning your imagination is not real. So I want you to, for a moment, pay attention to where you are sitting. The people in this room are sitting on chairs. If you're at home, you might be on the floor or on a couch. And see what's on your feet. You probably have shoes or sandals or sneakers, or if you're at home, you might have bare feet. And if you're here, take a look at this poster that has Mindful Spiritual Center in the logo. And all of those things, the chair, the shoes, the poster, they all started in someone's imagination. And so if somebody had not imagined that, you would be sitting on the floor, or you might be squatting, or you might be walking around barefoot. So the imagination is very real. It's not physical, it is real. And pretty much everything that exists in our physical universe is here because somebody imagined it first. So all of those things, the dreams, the intuition, the imagination, they are real and they affect our lives. And in some cultures, those things are considered more real than the physical existence. So you might ask yourself when you're saying, you know, was this real or was it just my imagination? Was this real or it was just a dream? You might change that question to say, what kind of reality is this? Is it physical waking reality? Is it unconscious dream reality, meaning a dream that you have but you don't really remember it when you wake up? Is it a lucid dream reality, which is a dream where in the dream you're aware that you're dreaming? These are all real. They're just different stages or states of reality. And I think that's true when we're talking about belief in a higher power, whether you call that God or Allah or the Tao or nature. People have different names. I believe they're all the same, and it's a matter of what people call it. And in the Bible, it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Meaning that faith is a belief that something exists even if we can't perceive it with our physical senses. And I think that belief is important because it affects everything. Think about your relationships. If you have a basic belief in the goodness of people, then you probably are likely to trust someone when you first meet them. If you have a belief that people are inherently evil, then you probably approach people with suspicion. If you have a belief that maybe there's something you want to do but you're kind of insecure about it, if you have a belief in your potential, or if someone else has a belief in your potential, then you might just do something to develop it. So when I was a kid, I was very quiet, bookworm, shy, people called me. And when I was in high school, I had two friends. We were talking about astrology earlier. They're both Aries, and Aries tend to be very fiery and flamboyant and outgoing. These two Aries friends of mine were getting involved in drama society, and they told me that I should join it with them. I said, oh no, I can't do that. I can't be on stage. They said, yes, you can. You'd be great at it. So it wasn't really peer pressure. It's that I thought, okay, I'll try it. And so I joined drama society, and I loved it. And there was a kind of offshoot called Magic Makers that we put on a play for kids, and we took it around to all the elementary schools. And had it not been those friends of mine who had a belief in me and my potential to be on stage, I might not be up here talking to you today. And that was one of the ways that I developed my ability to not see a sea of faces and be afraid. And, you know, although I will say the first time I did a small library lecture, I was so nervous my knees were shaking. I had to kind of hold on to a chair, but it got better. So I want to encourage you to pay attention to those inner invisible forces and to believe in yourself, to believe in a higher power, to believe in our connectedness, because I think the more that we live our lives with a belief in all of that, then we all become better and we can all raise each other up to become better.